Great. So welcome everybody. I'm Elaine Chang. I'm the Director of Market Development and Customer Success here at TaroWorks. And just to kick this off, one of the main reasons for an organization to start using digital tools in their operations is to have more and better insight into what's happening throughout the organization. But it doesn't, and it really shouldn't end there. Usually what I hear from organizations is that they want to use that insight to make improvements to their business or operations. I was recently at the ICT4D conference last week, and there was a great quote there that data can be used as either a rear view mirror or headlights, and that successful companies are using data as headlights to really illuminate the landscape and help navigate. So I thought that was a really great way to illustrate the role that data can play. And especially for organizations that are working in the emerging markets, these learnings are really leading to improved services and products to the beneficiaries and clients that they're serving. So it's even more important. So today, we're super excited to welcome Eshrat Waris, who's joining us from Brac's Skills Development Program, or the SDP. Eshrat's the manager of the program and is based in Dhaka. And in today's webinar, she'll be sharing the story of how they've built a data culture within the SDP program and used data and technology to improve how they're serving the participants in that program. So before I hand it off to her, I'm going to go over a few housekeeping rules. Everybody is automatically on mute. The session is being recorded. We will send the recording out to everybody who has joined us and for those who've registered. And you can always find our recordings on the TaroWorks blog. If you have any questions, feel free to type those in. There should be a question box. I'll moderate it throughout. We'll sort of pause at each of the sections. Or if you have an immediate question, feel free to type that in. So I think with that, I'm going to turn this over to Eshrat. So Eshrat, I'm going to make you the presenter.
Hi, Elaine, thank you for the introduction. Let me just go into present mode. So my name is Eshrat Waris, and I work in the Skills Development Program at Brac, where I am the manager for our Technology for Development unit. So before I dive into how SDP is building its data culture, I thought it was important to kind of set the context. Brac is an NGO that's based in Bangladesh, and for the Skills Development Program, our mandate has been to serve, to build an inclusive marketplace. To understand why we got in this space, I wanted to present a couple of numbers to you guys. 2.2 million young people enter the workforce every year in Bangladesh. Most of them, almost 80%, are employed in the informal sector. 95% of them are youth. And in spite of all these people entering the workforce, we find business leaders saying that there's not enough skilled workers. They're scarce. So with the Skills Development Program, we take on this mandate of providing people with better jobs. So for us, skills is not just about providing training. There is obviously, that is a big component of the work that we do, but job placement, improving people's income, and additionally working with employers and improving the workplace and building up the entire market ecosystem is our mandate, and that's how we see the term better jobs to be applied for us. So to achieve this, big goal of better jobs, we have multiple interventions or modalities actually. One of them, which has been our kind of starting point, we actually started in the informal sector with our interventions, was with the apprenticeship model. In South Asia, this has essentially been the way people have learned or people have been trained in the marketplace. So what's interesting is it's a model where that it initially requires a lot of trust to be built between the business owner and the apprentice. For us, we call the business owners the master craftspeople, and for the apprentices, we generally call them learners. What we see in the marketplace is it essentially almost takes 2 years before the MCP starts training the learners. But what we've done is essentially build on that model and shrunk the time period to 6 months, and taken on the role of providing credibility to and the liability in taking on the liability responsibility for both the MCP and the learners. We usually place 2 learners with 1 MCP, and we we have a very rigorous selection process for both the learners and the MCPs. The learners then undergo a 6-month training period, and after which we place them in jobs. Our intervention, we found that with every cycle we've been able to achieve 95% job placement, and these are wage employment, not self-employment, which is a very important factor for us because our research indicates that especially with girls, if they go for self-employment, they're moving away from the market, and that reduces their earning opportunities significantly. Our program targets 57% female, and our recent RCT has shown that we've been able to reduce early marriage by 62%. Additionally, we also have a mandate of bringing in at least 10% of our learners to be learners with disabilities. Over the past year, we've been able to achieve 11%. The beauty of this model is that we bring the training to the learner's doorstep, and they're being trained by experienced shop owners or business owners. And a big important component of this apprenticeship model is those who are going through this training program are essentially those who come from marginalized communities or they're minorities in the local economy. We've been operating with the apprenticeship model since 2012, and as time went on, in 2015-2016, what we started seeing is the career trajectory for a lot of these learners was that they would start their own businesses. For them, what they saw within the marketplace and around them is that the way to move up is to start your own business. And it was quite fascinating for us to see how they do not have any business training or access to capital, and yet they've been able to leverage certain market forces to be able to start their businesses. And we started studying that, like, what are these variables? And things that came out, the very important components were mentorship. And we designed an intervention where we provide business skills training. We partnered up with our microfinance program to develop a unique loan product that is customized for youth. Again, youth lack access to financial services because they're viewed as very risky clienteles. So, it's been a very interesting partnership working with microfinance who's used to lending to women, married women who are unlikely to migrate, or to lend working capital to SMEs. Youth was a very new portfolio for them, so designing a loan product for them. And additionally, we provide one-on-one consultation after they've complete the training program, and then obviously mentorship from experienced business people. Now, with our business training, it's really, the training is not the most important. I mean, the training is obviously important, but the goal is we are trying to incubate them so that by the time they complete the training, they've set up their businesses. And so our training is very much, again, hands-on, where they learn, how to select where they should put their shops, how much, how to do their costing, and multiple other variables. So this started as a pilot last year, where we trained 200 youth entrepreneurs. Since then, 168 have started their own businesses, and 30% have been connected to financial services. And this year, we are training 1,000. Our current phase has taken on 500 youth entrepreneurs. Now, as we worked in this space, another thing that became very evident for us is the need to work with the enterprises themselves. And we, I guess it was last year we received a large financing from the EU to work in the light engineering sector. And this is an intervention that allows us to really cover the entire informal ecosystem, starting from the employers and then going down to the learners with the apprenticeship model, and then also building up new business people in this in the light engineering sector. Light engineering sector, if you don't know, is essentially the sector where we're building nuts and bolts. So this is the industry which builds the parts for machineries, and it is a very hazardous sector. There are multiple issues here in terms of, especially with decent work. So our focus here is to work on the decent work agenda through the productivity perspective. How can these employers increase their productivity by, focusing on decent work? And alongside that, we've taken on a mandate to mainstream minorities and girls in the light engineering sector. So for us, it's very important to essentially do the kind of advocacy and mobilization to create a supportive ecosystem for our learners in the sector. But again, this was the informal economy, and there is a formal sector. With Bangladesh growing at almost, I think, 6.8% per annum, some will say it's 7.5. Bangladeshi industries are becoming increasingly capital intensive, and they require skilled workers who can operate new technology and manage the ever-growing workforce in the manufacturing sector. So we started the Institute for Skills Development, which was established in 2017, last year, to meet these skill demand and this kind of set the standard for skills training. Brac ISD, unlike our apprenticeship model or entrepreneurship model, like it very much focuses on upskilling and accrediting workers and connecting them to employment opportunities both in country and overseas. So since, again, our department only started in 2015, but our operations have existed since 2012, which was our flagship program called STAR. And since then, since 2012 till now, we have reached almost 64,000 people with our intervention, and we are in 46 districts across the country, and our goal is to reach hopefully 500,000 by 2020. So if there's any questions at this point?
Not right now.
Okay, so so that was a brief background on our programs, and I will dive into the challenge. Like, as you can understand, we have multiple interventions, and it is very much a field-heavy operation. And for us, data was absolutely critical to understand what was happening on the ground, to make decisions, to take decisions, and to understand, are we targeting the right people? Are we targeting the right trades? Because one of our mandate is that we provide market relevant training. So this is what our data look like. This is a photo from my office that I took, where I asked our staff to bring, like all the files that were there in our branch offices, to kind of see how we're essentially keeping our data, what information, what reports do we have, what data are we collecting, to kind of start the base. And at one point I thought, okay, maybe we can digitize all of this data, but just this is impossible. So we needed a system to make sense of this chaos. So For us, we actually try out a bunch of different things before TaroWorks. We thought, if this is a very low resource environment in Bangladesh, like why don't we just use, VBAs and, collect the information. We build out all the macros and everything and push it out to our field offices. And what we didn't anticipate is that there are multiple versions of Excel running across Bangladesh. And, we've had versions that were from 2003, 2005, 2015. So it was breaking down, and, no matter how many checks we put in, like there were so many different bugs. So the data that we received was not that great. And for us to match the data even, it was becoming very, very difficult. And so we realized that is a system, the whole concept of, if it's a low resource environment, we need to go for a low cost solution. That won't make sense. What we needed was, and we didn't want to get the data at the very end of a project period, because really at that point, all the information that's coming to us is aggregated, and we don't understand the nuances of what's happening in the field. So for us, we needed a technology where we were able to capture the data as things were happening in the field. So we needed a real-time field operations management system. And for us, TaroWorks served that purpose. Because it was all about designing, all of our surveys or forms in a way that was built for running field operations, and we were getting the data as things were happening on the ground, and our field staff could take decisions immediately. So for us, as we started working in this space, I guess when we started using TaroWorks as a pilot. Actually, before I dive into that, I just wanted to give you an idea of what our field operations also looks like. So this is kind of the structure that we have in the field, that we have a regional manager who has about 7 area managers. So we have 3 regional managers. Under them, we have area managers who have district managers who then have program organizers. So to kind of go back up again, our frontline workers are called our program organizers. So they're the ones who are essentially implementing the program on the ground. They operate from our branch office, and on average, each program organizer is responsible for about 56 learners. Each district manager supervises 6 program organizers, and each area manager supervises about 6 district managers. And then at the regional manager level, they supervise about 2 to 3 area managers. So we have a very, very people-heavy operation. Given again, like this operational structure that I'm talking about is very specific to the project where we started our first pilot. And when we started the pilot, the regional manager position didn't exist. It was just area manager, district manager, and program organizer. So again, like I was saying, it is a very field-heavy operation, very people-heavy because of the kind of work that we're doing on the ground. So when we implemented TaroWorks, we decided to do it as a pilot in 15 of our branches. And one of our biggest learnings during that period were 3, essentially what we sum up as 3 design principles. So before we started designing the data model or kind of designing the back end for TaroWorks, we wanted to understand what other programs at Brac had done with their multiple, MIS system. Brac, has been in the sector since 1972. Data has been a core part of how we run our operations. But, it's always done on pen and paper. It's never been, we have tried to transition to digital platforms. There were many interventions that have taken place, but there wasn't an uptake. Management wasn't using those systems to really, drive their decision. And as we studied it, one thing that became very clear is that those systems were being built for donor reporting. And when you're building a system for donor reporting or for HO level reporting, it's not where the data flows from. The data flows from the field. So for us, that was a big learning, that we needed to build a system that served our program organizers, not our area managers or our regional managers, because the data was coming from the program organizers and the data was in the field. So we needed to design for our field staff. The second lesson for us was, we shouldn't aim for perfection. We needed to be very rapid. We had to be scrappy, which means we had to push out a minimum viable product. We had to get our field staff, our POs, who are basically the short form for program organizer, their trust that this is a system that works, and if something doesn't work, we're here to fix it. And it was our mission to iterate as rapidly as possible, respond as quickly as possible. It was not necessary that it had to be perfect, because as we built and deployed, we just changed it as we got the feedback. And then thirdly, and I cannot stress this enough, is the fact that we needed to be embedded with operations. So when we started working in the 15 branches, and these were for our project called STAR, which is the apprenticeship-based training program in the informal sector, we decided to read the operation manual and build our data model accordingly. And there is the operation manual, and then there's reality. And there are best practices. We want first this thing to happen, then that thing to happen, and then we'll do this, and then we'll select that. What we found is that on the ground, things are merged, or one comes before the other. So to give an example, we would say, first we would do a market survey, a trade survey. Based off of that, we select the trade, and then we would do our MCP survey to find, the MCPs we want to take onto our program. Once we found the MCPs, we would then do the learner survey. In reality, the trade and the MCP survey was done simultaneously. And then if possible, before the MCP survey was completed, our field staff would start doing the learner survey, because they wanted to have as many learners as possible, in case some migrated, or some were uninterested in joining the program. So again, it was very important for us to really start talking, to really be embedded with operations, because each report that they ask from the field, there is a reason behind that. And for us, it was to understand those reasons and build a system for that, so that it serves our operations team. And the data from that would essentially build up to, answer the bigger question, whatever questions we have in our log frame or the indicators over there. So, I guess if we started, so like I was saying, we started in the 15 branches, and, as we were doing the pilot, one thing that came up over and over again for the 15 branches, which were dispersed amongst, I think I'm forgetting now, but I think about 5 to 7 district managers, which meant, it was just there for 3 area managers, was that, as you went up the level, the number for the district manager was half of the branches that they were overseeing. But for the area manager, it was like a small portion of what they were responsible for. So they were like, yes, we think this is a good idea, but this is just a partial view. This doesn't let me make decisions. I don't know what's happening. I still have to maintain both the paper system and the TaroWorks. So for us at that point, there was at least we decided, how can we test this out, because the project has already started. Around the time we got funding to start a project in Shatkhira, a different area, and we decided, you know what, if this is the feedback that we're getting from the area managers, we would know if this is a system that works, if we could fully cover one area. We decided to test it out in Shatkhira. And since we started implementing in Shatkhira, and at the same time, after a month of operation, we decided to do a design workshop, because this is what we do at the end of each project cycle. So STAR's intervention had just completed, or was about to complete, and we decided to bring our field staff, or part of the pilot project, in to ask them what they thought of the pilot. And this entire time, as we were doing the pilot, one question that we're trying to grasp or deal with was, what would be our key metric here? How do we know that we've been successful with this intervention? And we were trying to think, okay, how many times has someone logged into the system, or if they're checking the dashboard, or how, but again, those were really not such great metrics. So we started during the design workshop, to capture the learnings, and to understand if how successful or how useful the pilot was. We started the conversation was, is this a system that works for you? And what was fascinating was, at that point, that was kind of like, our field staff, our area managers, district managers, POs, they were all there. They kind of just waved off that question. They dove right into, with this survey that you've put out, I prefer, it would make more sense for us if you design it like this. For this one over here, if you can bring this one in, or, for me, it would be useful if you design the dashboard like that. They were giving us what they wanted from the system. And that, for us, showed that they had ownership, and, that they have bought into the system. And it is a system that was working for them, because they were engaging with the system daily, and they were giving us these feedback. So at that point, we decided to really scale up our operation. So we, in the span of 2 years, we've been able to achieve nearly 10x growth in terms of coverage, in terms of how many branches or individuals on our field staff are using TaroWorks. And at this point, all of our projects, not just the pilot project, is using TaroWorks. So this happened in, we did the scale up in 2017, new projects came in 2018, and we've expanded our operations to them as well. So again, we're, with some projects, they're at a more mature state than others, while others we're still just starting out. But, the story doesn't end there, because we've got, we've been able to kind of scratch the surface. Now was the time of, with the design workshops, we got all these feedback from our staff that, what product feature do we need to bring in, what could we improve, and, there are 3 things that I want to talk about in terms, like, for our impact. So I talked about growth, and now I'll talk about it from the product perspective. We, and all the examples I'll be using here right now is from our STAR project. One thing that's very important in STAR is how many, like, our learners have to come from the most marginalized, ultra-poor communities. Sorry, from the most marginalized communities and from ultra-poor households, because this intervention is targeted for them. So when our field staff are going in to survey the learners, potential learners, we have a mechanism put in place that buckets our learners into different categories. So depending upon their vulnerability. So if a learner is in A category, that means they are the most vulnerable. And those who are in D category are, the least vulnerable. So what that means is that when our field management team, is that, our POs are going out there and they are doing the survey, and and the system kind of buckets the learners into different categories. Then it's a mandate of the district manager and the area manager to go to every learner's household to actually see if these learners should be selected into our intervention. So irrespective of whether they're in A category, B category, C category, or D category, they have to go to every household. And this actually lets us also, ensure that we ensure our data quality, because their main task here now is to verify that the learner does come from an ultra poor household, and then also validate the information that has been put in. And also then select them into the program. So the categorization basically enables our field staff to move more efficiently in the field. So they're able to, visit the most vulnerable learners first, and at the same time, edit or update the information as required on the learner's profile. And, when we're talking about updating information, it could be in terms of verifying if this is the trade that they really want to be in, their contact information, so that we can actually maintain our data integrity. Next, so when I spoke about targeting, this is very much specific to our preparatory phase when we're trying to select learners into our intervention. Our second phase in our training program is the tuning period, and this is where it gets a bit complicated. Our field staff, the maximum number of learners they supervise is about 70, which means they have to visit about 35 shops per week. Each of our program organizers may have about 5 trades that they're working in. So this could range from working, learners who are being trained as beauticians, in tailoring, in mobile phone servicing, refrigeration, aluminum fabrication. So these are 5 very, very different trades, and our field staff, will not know each one that well, and especially if they're new, it is, it is a lot of information to take in. So what we've done is we've worked with our field operations team, and then our technical quality team, and then my team, to essentially figure out how can we develop measures where our program organizers who are not, trainers or from that sector, are able to go, when they go in for the visit to see how the learners are doing, and assess their progress, how can they actually do that assessment? And it is a very long, drawn out process, but we were then able to map out, okay, in this 6 month, this is what they should be learning. So every month, so for each month, these are the things, these are the competencies they should know how to achieve. And this is how they would then measure. So we put in the kind of thing, not questions, but the things that they should be looking at, and then how they should be assessing that. So as an example, in a tailoring shop, when our field officers go in, they could, the question is not like, tell me what tools, or, how this, I don't know, what kind of, stitching mechanism should you use for this blouse? Like, it's not so much that, but it's more about, okay, can you show me how you'd, cut this frock? And we put in guidance in there, like, if they cut it in this way, then they're A grade. If they cut it in this fashion, it's that. If they do it in another way, it's C. So it's all about, are they able to do it? And for POs to see if they are able to do it, and then, put in that measure. This enables, for our supervisors to actually, on the one side, they're able to kind of see how much work has been done in the field, how many visits have been completed. But at the same time, we're able to generate this insight, which learners are falling behind, who needs additional support. The managers can then, tell the POs that, you should move accordingly like this, or focus more so on this trade. or, and for us at the HO level, we're able to triangulate this information with our placement information to see, how well our curriculum is in, enabling our learners to get higher paid jobs. This we tried it out as a pilot last year in 2 trades, which was tailoring and mobile phone servicing. It took us a long time to build this out, and we actually brought in TaroWorks as a consultant to help us think through this process, because this went beyond what the survey forms were able to do. This required significant redesigning of the back end and working with metadata. But it got really good traction, and this year we've expanded this to 17 trades. We're currently building out the kind of the model behind, and we're hoping to deploy this in the next 2 months. Another request that we got from our field, and it's been a problem that's been there for a very long time, is we have a mandate or that learners can drop out from the program within, or learners can be changed or replaced for the first 15 days of the program. After that, if a learner drops out, then that is counted as a dropout, so that they've left the program and they cannot be replaced. So for us, the targeting is very critical, because we do make a huge investment in this, and we don't and we want to make sure that those who need this intervention the most, those who will stay in the training program for the entire 6 months, are those who we want to bring into the program. So but what in our old system, we wouldn't know how many people have dropped out, and if we did, it would be something, information we'd find out very much down the line. Even if we went for our field visits before, we wouldn't know. We would know that there were supposed to be 50 learners in this branch, and we'd go through the files, and okay, there are 50 learners, but our staff may have replaced one of the papers with with a different learner. There was no way of tracking if someone had been replaced, if someone had dropped out. So now we started automating this process. So when a learner drops out, and a PO has to update it into the system, we are able to track their reason for dropping out immediately, and actually really identify how many have dropped out. And this is information that goes from the field up to the head office management, because it is something we look at very, very critically. So that was the impact on our kind of how we've been able to really push our product further, and use many of the Salesforce features as well. On the operation side, yes.
Let me pause here just for 1 second. I think that last point that you gave was a really good segue into one of the questions that we received. So you were saying that data from these dropouts went up to management level. So we have a question from Nisha, which is, so from my understanding, this is mainly field staff who are utilizing the product. And are there cases where higher level management, like the area or regional managers, are there cases where they are using the product? And if so, can you talk a bit about that?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Sorry, I should have clarified that. Yes, it is being used by all of our field level staff. We built the system for the POs, but then all of that information flows up to the district managers, the area managers, the regional managers. They are seeing all of that information, all of the work that's happening. They have it. It's coming up on their dashboard, and they're also part of the the survey process themselves, because they have certain targets that need to be fulfilled. So for us, it's been essentially designing, designing the forms or the surveys for each level regarding how they use it or what information they're all collecting at different levels. Does that answer the question?
Thanks, Eshrat.
Okay.
Hopefully that helps, Nisha.
And so to go, so that was more from the product perspective. And the last, I guess, part of the impact that I want to talk about is operations. So we're generating a ton of data here. and it's phenomenal. Like what we once you're able to put a team together to really mine the data. And again, like I said earlier, that we work very closely with our field operations team. So there is a team member who's always who's always going into the weekly meetings or monthly staff meetings to really understand a lot of the concerns that are coming from the field. And here I want to touch on a couple of things where we have really gone back into the data that has been collected and to answer some of the questions that have come up from our field staff. So one part of a program, a mandate that we have, is we want to bring in that we bring in vulnerable learners, and additionally, another mandate is we want to not have all of our female learners just go to tailoring and beauty parlor. We want them to go into more unconventional trades that are male dominated, be it graphic design, be it wood furniture or IT support. Now, what's interesting, a lot of our field staff came back to us and they're like, look, all the vulnerable, all of the learners that we're putting into these unconventional trades are the most vulnerable learners. So these are our A category learners. These are learners who have no options, no choices, and we're imposing a choice upon them of these unconventional trades, because what we've found with unconventional trades is that during the training period or during our intervention period, we're able to place these girls with MCPs who would train them in mobile phone servicing or motorcycle mechanics. But once our intervention is over and we've placed them into a job, a lot of them drop out. And our field staff hypothesis was this is basically happening to the most vulnerable because they have no choice. We're imposing a choice upon them. So we should this is a system flaw. So what we did then is actually go back into the data and look at this. Is that the case? So the graph that I'm presenting to you here is essentially for our most vulnerable learners. More than 60% of our A grade learners are essentially in tailoring and dressmaking and beauty salon, which are trades that are considered the most conventional ones for girls. So our most vulnerable learners are not necessarily being placed into the most unconventional trades. Next, we started playing around with our metadata that we're generating from the questionnaires, and so this is basically, so like I was saying earlier, after our POs go to the field and they've surveyed, our district managers and area managers move in there to verify the information, edit certain information, and then select our learners into the program. So this is about 2, 4, 6, 7, 8. These are like 8 questions that we push out in the learner selection survey, and that our field staff can edit. So the variables are in English, but it's basically name, household income, date of birth, how many years ago did they drop out, how many people in the family are earning. So what you can see is, so the data on the left-hand side is that from 2017, and the data on the right is from 2018. What we saw was a significant drop in the information that was being edited. The one information that everyone was editing very carefully was name, which is on the top, because the names would go into the certificate, and so they were very careful. But with everything else, we were seeing the editing rate had dropped significantly, and for us that was a trigger as to why this was happening. So we then started looking into how long it took them to complete the selection process, and it was less than a minute. When our field staff moved into the field based on this insight, we found that essentially our staff were going to the household, but they were not validating the information. They would just go, they would move on the basis of what the PO had given them. And a list of learners. These are the learners you should be selecting into the program. So just go to these households. Don't visit all the others. The rest you could just or they would go, but then they would just like say no, and they would basically select the ones who the POs wanted into the program without really editing much of the information. So we were debating, okay, this, and when the field staff, and this we verified in the field. So we're like, okay, what can we do? We only have a month left of the program, and we have about 2,000 participants left who need to be selected. So what we introduced at that point was a signature field into our selection survey. What's interesting, as you can see, that the time shot up significantly, and now it takes 1.5 minutes for them to complete the survey. Because what we learned from another project was the minute you ask someone to sign something, it's very difficult for them to sign it, because they are essentially saying that, okay, I am putting, I'm giving you my reference, I'm giving you that I take on the liability for this, that I have checked this, I have, they're taking on responsibility for that. But then again, like putting in the signature field, it may have just been the difficulty in just, putting in their signature that drove up the time. So then we decided, like, okay, fine, how about we have that, but at least we're seeing, the number of edits were increasing at least, and, the time taken was also going up, but it could just be because it was, the signature. So then we decided, okay, why don't we try another tweak in the form? Instead of saying selection, what if we use approval? So then when we put in the approval effect, obviously the time taken to select decreased, but it was still way higher than how much time they were spending before. So these were kind of, slight, like behavioral changes that we're able to bring in by, slightly tweaking the product design itself, or the survey design. Then another, I think this is the last one over here, then we talk about the data stuff. It's like I said earlier, like a mandate of ours is that we want to bring in learners with disability into our program. And now that we have so much data about our MCPs, we wanted to understand who would want to take, what type of MCP was the best place to put a PWD learner with. And, so one of my colleagues ran a artificial neural network analysis on all the data that we have on our MCPs. And these were essentially what stood out in the analysis, that MCPs who have gone to school beyond class 8, those who are business owners, whose experience are more than 8 years or equal, and who've previously trained at least 7 apprentices, are the best fit for taking on PWD learners. So this was a really interesting insight that the operations team has taken on and will be implementing in the next phase of our intervention. So so this is kind of like the impact that we saw from our operation side, like how we are using the data at every level to drive the data back into the operation design and really improve our productivity and our efficiency and our effectiveness as much as possible. So to finish up the presentation, I just want to touch on a couple of, I think, best practice or lessons learned for us. Please design for the field, not for the donor, because that's setting yourselves up for failure. Management needs to drive the system. And for management to drive the system, the team has to be absolutely embedded with field operations. It means hovering over their shoulders if necessary, moving in the field with them, doing whatever is necessary to really understand where their pain points are in designing for them. Technology is also the easiest part. Really, it doesn't take long to build a system or to learn how to use Salesforce at all. But the hardest part is behavioral change, which is getting people to accept a system like this, and really to shift away from using a paper-based system to a digital platform. So recently, for our regional managers, we did a training because we got a massive demand for them. Like, we can see the reports, we see the dashboard, we want to be able to build the reports ourselves. Our regional managers are, they've been working for Brac for almost 20 to 35 years. They've never previously touched a smartphone or a laptop. And, these are guys who were area managers before. Now they're the ones who are building out customized reports on Salesforce. And so, and it took us 2 years to get there. So be patient. It takes time to change behavior. And, Erin over at TaroWorks has been a great support. Every time we've gone to her with a design issue, a major challenge, like, she's always been there to kind of guide us through, how we should be thinking about the problem, and essentially helping us, learn by doing. So whenever we've, gone to her for consultancy, she kind of gave us like we talked about the idea, and then she kind of map it out, but then we implemented it. So, it was a great way to learn and also really leverage on TaroWorks resources and knowledge. The photo that you see on the right is essentially all of them are essentially our field operations team. And this was from one of our design workshops where everyone was trying to do, write out TaroWorks, but I think most people just did the T and 1% did an A. So that's it for me. So if you guys have any questions now, I'm happy to answer.
This is an awesome photo, Eshrat. I was wondering what that was. Great. So if you have any questions, please feel free to chat them into that question box or into the chat. So Eshrat, thanks for going over all of that. Super interesting. Couple questions here. We have one from Daniel, which is, do you have any plans to replicate a similar model in other areas, say in Kenya? And what sort of support do you get from government with regards to job placement of learners?
Okay. So we've been in conversation with multiple people. So our Brac International program actually wants to take our training program to actually Kenya, Tanzania, and our operations over there. But again, we're still scoping out the market there. With regards to job placement, so are you asking specifically about the apprenticeship or just for the skills program in general?
I'm not sure. Daniel, if you can add a clarification there. Skills.
Okay, skills. So our mandate is to be market relevant. So we generally tend to partner with industries for our placement, because that's where we try to understand what is the demand from the sector, from the market itself, what skill sets they're looking for, what kind of employees or workers they're looking for. And that's how we design the intervention. But we've also realized, there is a limited resource that we have with this model, and we need, we see the government is a big partner for us in scaling up our operations even more across Bangladesh. But with regards to the placement, we essentially work with market actors, so employers and industry partners.
Great, thanks. I have a question. So there's so many things that you could potentially look into in this program, just because there's so many facets, so many kind of roles involved. How do you prioritize what analysis or hypotheses to test?
So that essentially comes from, so we have these monthly meetings with our field staff. And like I said earlier, one of our team member is always present there. And what we do is we're usually present there as kind of bystanders. bystanders, and we just listen to what questions are coming up. And we do these bi-monthly seminars called data talks, where we essentially accumulate the questions and see which questions came up the most, and then research those questions for a month, and like really dive deep into the data to see what the analysis is showing, and then present it to our field operations team, at HO and from our field offices.
Great. Okay, we have a question from Anton at Brac, actually. Does the system connect in information relating to other Brac programs or inputs that participants receive, or is it just focused on the SDP inputs? And I'm wondering if this can build up a bigger picture of factors that drive success.
Yeah. So this is something we really want to do. We really want to integrate our systems with other programs. Right now, the way the system is built on TaroWorks and Salesforce, it is just for SDP. But within Brac, we're actually having quite a few conversations, at least in Brac Bangladesh, about having multiple data marts for the programs. So all of the data that we have, all the models that we have, get dumped into the data mart, and we're then able to pull other programs data and run the analysis. But again, our data systems have not been connected, so that we can't really at this point, and it would be amazing if we could, for a learner who's gone through a program, who is then taking on a loan from microfinance, and is then sending their kids to one of our Brac schools, or using, our healthcare services from our health program. So, we haven't been able to get there yet, but that is something, the technology department at Brac is aiming to do. Hopefully, it's a conversation we've started, and hopefully we'll see some great results by the end of this year or early next year.
That would be really exciting. Maybe on that note, and since we are sort of at time, what's next for this program and for using this technology?
So right now, our biggest priority are two things. So the way that we build our data models, it's very much, again, like I said, built for operations. So we build it specifically for each project that's running. So even within SDP, the models are not talking to each other. So right now we're actually redoing our data system to integrate all the different projects together, because at the strategy level, our management, our senior management, wants to see what's going on. The kind of the targets that we've set up for ourselves, are we achieving them? Where are the deviations? Where are we actually making a huge difference? But kind of like taking on a more macro level picture, because we've been working so much at the micro level now. And another area that we're really we want to explore is how do we actually count the number of unique clients, program participants that we have that have gone through the intervention. So one of my colleagues is super excited to work on this algorithm to figure out, at least with 80-85 accuracy, like how many unique participants there are. So that's something we're hoping to push out by the end of this year, just from the data that we have, and at least be able to tell, like, okay, this are like the unique number of people we have reached with our intervention.
Great. Okay, last question from the audience, from Melanie. At the beginning, did you use Salesforce, or did you start using Salesforce for this program? Or like, was Brac using Salesforce broadly, or did you start with this program? Yeah.
So our affiliate offices, Brac USA and Brac UK, have been using Salesforce, but that's always been used for fundraising purposes. So basically for what Salesforce has been built for, like donor management or customer relationship management. But we were the first program at Brac to actually use Salesforce for our operations management.
Great. Hopefully, Melanie, that helps. Great. So then we're perfectly on time. So Eshrat, I just want to pause and thank you so much for sharing all of these insights. This is super inspiring, and I hope everyone has gotten ideas for how to start using data more in your organization. So Eshrat, thank you so much. And the recording will be sent out to everybody who's registered. And yeah, till the next webinar. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.